Other chemicals cause the hearts to swell up. Finally, he tried a soap commonly found in shampoos.
We saw the heart become translucent, and it was obvious to us all that something had happened that hadn't happened in the months before.
What we had is this thing that looked like a heart, but it looked like a ghost heart, if you will.
Injections of dye showed the scaffold to be undamaged down to the smallest blood vessels. And we now know that this technique works with many organs, including human-sized ones.
This is essentially the scaffold of a heart. Who knew a heart had a full skeleton? But it essentially has no cells, dead or alive. It's beautiful. You can see the blood vessels here, the chambers of the heart. You can see the valves.
But could a bare scaffold once again become the framework of a living heart? Taylor soon discovered it was more than a matter of injecting cells.
Just putting cells on a scaffold isn't enough. It's putting cells on a scaffold and giving them an electrical signal and giving them a mechanical blood pressure and then giving them oxygen. It's not just a heart in a jar, it's a heart in an artificial body. So it's simple in many ways and it's unbelievably complicated.
After 8 days, the first lab-grown heart beat on its own.
It really makes you go, what is life? The first time you see something beat that was dead, it's one of those yes moments in life.
Since then, Ott has joined Massachusetts General Hospital and used the same method to build a pair of lungs. After coming back to life, one lung was successfully implanted in a rat. So if you can make a working, living lung, then it seems to me you can
build literally any organ.
Any organ. This novel approach has already made a difference in the real world. In Barcelona, Spain, this woman, Claudia Castillo, might be dead without it. 2 years ago, tuberculosis devastated her windpipe, making it difficult for her to breathe. But surgeon Paolo Macchiarini saw a solution. Give Claudia a new windpipe, which her body would never reject, because it would be made of her own cells, grown on a natural scaffold. And so, in June of 2008, Macchiarini and an international team of specialists removed a windpipe from a human cadaver, washed it clean, and reseeded it with living cells from Claudia's body. 4 days later, the new windpipe was transplanted into Claudia.
If you transplant an organ without tissue engineering, you need immunosuppression, you need close watching, and this was absolutely not the case for Claudia. She never had any sign of rejection. Indeed, 4 days after surgery, she was home.
More than a year later, Claudia is living a normal life, free of the fear that she will reject her new body part.
I feel like the transplant is not from the body of another person. It's mine.
That sense of ownership might soon be crucial to organ recipients, because their scaffolds might not come from a person at all.
This is a pig kidney sliced in half, and it's the same size, same complexity as a human kidney. We could cover this with human cells and, in theory, build you a kidney.
Human organs built on natural or artificial scaffolds? Made from a patient's own cells to avoid rejection? Available in unlimited supply? Most researchers believe it will be a reality within decades. And Taylor is even more optimistic.
Kidney, liver, lung. We're not decades away from building something complicated. We're more like years away.
Just like some well-made cars, some people last longer than others. They don't fall apart. They don't even need replacement parts. What's up with that? You know, if medical researchers figure it out, then maybe everyone could last longer. Correspondent Zaya Tong tracked down some lucky folks who don't age like most of us, and the doctors who are trying to figure out the secret to their fountain of youth. So how'd I do?
Some people are like forces of nature. Aging gracefully is simple for them.
My name is Chuck Yogi. I'm 91 years old ever since the last couple of days. So I'm fully 91.
Somehow, James Harai got to 91 too.
I've been blessed with good health, I guess,
Kind of makes you wonder how they do it.
Do you have a secret to looking so young at 90?
Just don't worry about unnecessary things, I'm happy-go-lucky.
But while these guys are living proof that longevity comes naturally for some, other people are pulling out all the stops to try and live as long as they possibly can. Computer scientist and inventor Ray Kurzweil takes 150 pills every single day.
That might sound like a lot, but it's not enough to just be natural. I take 400 milligrams a day of resveratrol, a lot of vitamin D.
So what's he doing with all those pills?
In my view, death is a great robber of all the things that give meaning to life. It destroys knowledge and wisdom and relationships. And there's actually a lot that you can do to slow down these aging and disease processes.
But is Ray wasting his time looking for a fountain of youth that's just a myth?
The goal right now is to live long enough to get to a future point where we will have technologies that will extend our longevity even further.
In fact, scientists have been tinkering in the lab trying to extend life for a long time, and they've come up with a couple of things that do work in animals. Calorie restriction, for instance. Basically, putting an animal on a diet seems to kick in a survival response and helps it live longer. And they found a substance in red wine that has a similar effect. But what if somebody could figure out how these guys did it so effortlessly?
The fish not cooperating today. I think the camera shy of me.
Cynthia Kenyon thinks she may have found one of the keys to a long life in a tiny, nearly microscopic worm called C. elegans.
So how can we learn anything about human aging from these tiny little worms?
I know they look really different from us, but the basic processes of life are very similar at the molecular level. The good thing about these little guys is that they get old and die in just a little over 2 weeks. Okay, watch this. I'm going to show you something really cool now. So this is the normal worm when it's young.
So it's a nice sprightly worm, what I'd expect a worm to look like, quite feisty.
Now I'm going to show you the same kind of worms, but just 2 weeks later when they're old.
Wow.
So here, this is a normal worm when it's old, and you can see they're about to die.
Oh, wow. So these are really slow moving here. I didn't think you could see aging in a worm so dramatically.
Okay, so now what I'm going to show you are worms that are the same age, but you'll see that they look much younger.
So these worms are the exact same age as the ones that we saw that were almost dead?
Yeah, they look much younger, even though they're the same age.
And they're wriggling about just like the other ones, huh?
So they're like 90-year-old people who look 45.
That's incredible. So what's different about these?
We've changed one gene. That's all.
Kenyon changed one gene in the worm. Genes are made of DNA, long strings of 4 chemicals best known by their initials, A, G, C, and T. Together, they form the basis of all life on Earth. Kenyon found that there was a gene that scientists call FOXO, which had a central role in keeping her worms freakishly youthful.
What FOXO does is it helps the animal to protect and repair its tissues. The reason that it can do it is this one gene controls a lot of other genes.
FOXO is a master control gene, meaning it regulates hundreds of other genes, genes that have a profound effect on the worm's health.
So you can think of it as a superintendent of a building. So if you have a building, nice big building, obviously it has to be maintained. What FOXO does, or the building superintendent does, is to keep the building in good working order.
The superintendent makes sure that the electricity works and that the roof doesn't leak.
It makes sure that the walls are painted by hiring painters. It makes sure that the floors are swept.
But the superintendent doesn't actually do all these important jobs.
The building superintendent would hire workers to do these different things. What FOXO does in the cell is it switches on other genes.
Those worker genes do jobs like enhancing the immune system and protecting the cells from bacterial infection.
Some of these genes that protect the cell make proteins that will kill invading microorganisms. Others are switched on that are antioxidant genes.
Kind of like a rust inhibitor for a cell. Now, most living things need oxygen, but oxygen can actually be damaging to cells that aren't prepared to deal with it. And yes, there's a worker gene for that too.
I'd say altogether there are probably about 100 worker genes that have very important roles. And together, what you get is a cell or tissue or an animal that stays in really good working condition for a lot longer.
All those processes are actually directed by the FOXO superintendent gene. Kenyon tweaked one gene in the worms and made FOXO more active. With a more active superintendent, the cells became more resilient than normal, and Kenyon's worms lived twice as long. If there's one gene that dramatically increases lifespan in worms, could the same be true in humans?
I went to Alaska 10 times.
Yeah? They have big fish in Alaska, right?
Mr. Harai and the others are part of a groundbreaking 45-year study in Hawaii that's trying to find out.
The Honolulu Heart Program population is a group of Japanese-American men.
Beautiful sunset.
That we have followed since the 1960s.
When you hear people my age, they say, it's so hard to even get out of bed. So I said, so why don't you jump up? But they said, no.
What's he have that other people don't?
35 times.
What's important for aging is it's a process. So we've studied the process in these men for decades.
Wilcox and geneticist Timothy Donlan wanted to see if they could find out anything about the genetics of human aging from this unique scientific resource.
This is one of the freezers that houses the over 8,000 samples from this project that's been conducted over the last 45 years.
Wow, so this is like data frozen in time.
That's right, safely tucked away here.
Using these samples, they tested 5 genes that had already been shown to help animals live longer to see if any of them would extend human life as well.
And based on that list, we found one gene that was heads and shoulders above everything else, and that was the FOXO gene.
The FOXO gene, that's right. The same superintendent gene that helped double the life of Cynthia Kenyon's tiny worms. Though everybody has the FOXO gene, these Hawaiian men seem to be living longer, healthier lives because they have a protective version of FOXO.
We found that if you have this FOXO gene, you have a 2-fold chance of living to 100. And if you have 2 copies of this, you have a 3-fold chance of living to 100.
A gene typically consists of 2 copies. You get 1 copy from your mother and 1 copy from your father.
So with FOXO, the area that we looked at, you could have a C or a G from your mom and your dad. The vast majority of us have 2 Cs. About 25% of us have 1 G and 1 C. And about 10% have 2 Gs. If you have 2 Gs, you hit the jackpot. That's triple the odds of living to be 100. You can go to Vegas with those odds.
I'm not very good at this, but I read palms a little bit. And believe it or not, you actually have an incredibly long lifeline.
No kidding.
Yeah, you do.
And not only triple your odds of living that long, but being healthy. So it was a gene that appeared to be associated with extended health span, not just lifespan.
It tells us that FOXO in humans affects aging. You could have imagined that we have the gene, but it doesn't do the same thing. But this says it does.
News of the Hawaii study sped around the world, and scientists confirmed the results in population after population in Germany, Italy, New England, California, and in China. Nir Barzilai of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York
I am now 98 years old.
also found a similar pattern in the FOXO genes of Ashkenazi Jewish